All right, ladies and gentlemen, today you are going to be working on your thumbnail sketches. So when you get to this step, I should have given you a slip of paper like this and a square like this. And what you are going to do is you're going to combine kind of everything we've done so far. So first you're going to take this and you are going to glue it to the edge. Now, in order for this to fit properly, this here you've got to glue it right to the edge of your paper. So you can choose which side you want to do it, but you want it right at the edge of your paper. And you want to pick the back of a drill page that's relatively white, doesn't have a lot of bleed through from our sketchbook making. So you want to pick the whitest page you've got. You want to glue this all the way to one side when you're working on it horizontally. You are then going to trace this box 3 times. So this year you only need to do 3 thumbnail sketches. So you're going to trace it 3 times. Now if you know that you're someone who erases a lot, you might want to trace these boxes in marker so that if you end up erasing something, you don't erase your box. But you're going to do kind of 2 vertical and 1 horizontal. Now when you're designing these, you can always turn, if you want to try a horizontal one and you only have 1 horizontal but you want to try another one, you can always turn this page whatever direction you want. These thumbnail sketches don't necessarily have to go in this direction. However, since we are doing trees, the likelihood is you're probably going to want to work this way a little bit more. But if you want to work this way or you want to turn this so you have 2 horizontals and 1 vertical, you can do that either way. So now we're going to read the directions. So composition is the way an artwork is put together. We artists use thumbnail sketches to plan where we're going to put objects in our drawing. So these are essentially our rough drafts. So from here to your final, there aren't going to be a lot of changes. So this is where you figure out all the things that you're trying to figure out before you get to your final. So we're going to use the rules of a good composition as you brainstorm several different ways of organizing your sketchbook cover. You're going to trace 3 boxes, which we just did, and we're going to make sure each one has all of these things. Now this here are the rules of a good composition. They're listed first because that's really what needs to be in the back of your mind the entire time. Now, this year you are 7th graders, so you're going to get a little bit more freedom. You only have to follow 2 of these rules of a good composition, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as I'm doing one of mine. Then, what else needs to be includes a border with a cultural pattern. So we're going back to, where is that worksheet? I think, oh, there it is. I haven't glued mine in yet. So we're going back to this paper. So we need to include a border that's somewhat like this. We need to include an abstracted tree with your family name. So that's taking back from that worksheet we just completed, this one here. So we're going to include an abstracted tree from here and a font from here. And then you're going to include 2 images representing you and 4 to 6 images that represent your family. So at some point, you need to have 2 of the images from here and 4 to 6 of the images from here. So maybe 2 from here and 2 from here, or 1 from here and 3 from here. However you want to divide up how you want to represent the people in your family tree, in your tree of your life. So we're going to start with the border. Now, the border is kind of interesting. So you can do this in many different ways. You could kind of draw yourself, you could give yourself a straight border, like the whole thing goes right around the outside edge. But that's not really the most interesting way to do this. What you want to think about is maybe making some of your border edges thicker or wider than others so that you've kind of got, so I'm thinking maybe I have something like this, so that I have this big thick border down here, but I have this space up here. Or maybe even your border doesn't have to be square. You could do something like this, where this is all your border space. You could do something where you've got several different pieces. So I kind of broke up all my borders and gave you some ideas. Then the next thing, so you put these in the order that you kind of need to be thinking about them in, is an abstracted tree. So if I go back and look at that, I need to pull this so it's easier to see. So if I go back and look at that, this first one is kind of rounded. So maybe you don't necessarily need to use all three of your trees if you don't want to. I kind of want to try them out. So maybe on this one, my tree trunk goes here, and it's going to go like this, and then maybe I have my branches. So you might want to have your tree overlapping your border. You might want to have your branches going inside and breaking up the space inside your border. So the trick here is that just like we were talking about with those abstracted trees, we want to break up this space that isn't border space, because that border space is going to be pretty full of stuff. But the inside here is going to be, you want to break this into the spaces where you're going to put like the objects from your tree. So if I've got this like that, and remember, anytime you overlap something, you erase what it overlaps. So this tree goes here, and then remember, inside this abstracted tree, it needs to have your family name in an interesting font. So I go back to that font worksheet, and the reason we thought about all of these different things was so that we could think about, well, maybe I could put, if my family name is going in this shape here, it would be kind of like this shape here. If my family name is going in one of these, it could go here. So your family name can be pretty big, or it could be small and on one of your branches. So I think with this one, I kind of like the idea of my family name in the trunk. So I'm going to put it right here. Now I think I am also going to do not just I'm going to make my name a kind of hyphenate name so that I have my maiden name as well as my married name. That one doesn't really touch. So you want to make sure it's doing a good job of filling whatever space you're putting it in. And you can turn it around corners. So that, there we go. I've got my family name in an abstracted font. So I've got my border. Now my border needs to include those patterns. So maybe I take this section here and I make it some of those Cherokee patterns. And see how I'm stopping when I hit my tree, and I repeat that pattern to fill up that space. And then maybe this Cherokee pattern changes into, and I make this pattern here because I really liked those Celtic knotwork patterns. So maybe I turn this into more of that Celtic knotwork. And then I have the kind of knot coming through it. I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me draw all this. But, so I've got my border with a cultural pattern, so I can check that off. I've got an abstracted tree with my family name. I can check that off. So now I need to include my images. So I'm going to pick my favorites, and you want to think about kind of how you're putting these images on here. So maybe the images that are representing you are all kind of together, or maybe you spread them out, or maybe you kind of have it so that like the images that are closer to the trunk are you, and then as it gets away from the trunk, it becomes more your extended family. I think that's what I'm going to do because I'm thinking about this more like a family tree. So I'm going to draw my stuff here. Now, when it comes to these symbols, this is where you're going to get some of these compositional elements. So because I didn't put my tree right in the center of the page, I've already got not being centered. So everything's kind of to the side, and as long as I don't put something big and in the center, I've got that rule. Having cropping, things going off the edge of the page. The border will help us with that a little bit, but I've also got some of that cropping with my tree. But this one this year is not as important as it was last year. This one's one of the ones that I'm absolutely going to look for before you go around. You need to have overlapping, and we're going to call it times 3. So you need to have 3 things that are overlapping things. Now I'm going to say that your tree overlapping your border can count as 1. But anything else overlapping your border doesn't count. Your objects are going to be how you get this overlapping. So you want your objects to either overlap part of your tree, so that they really look like they're all connected and tied together. Either that, or you want them to overlap each other, so that they everything ties together and becomes this one artwork. So it doesn't feel like a lot of little things everywhere, which is not a good composition. Having balance is something else I'm looking for this year. I don't want everything on one side. So right now, if I went in and did all of my symbols and I did them all around the trunk, this side of the image is really kind of plain and boring. So I want to make sure that I'm including some of my images here and some over here so that the whole thing is balanced. And you're going to fill the page. And part of this filling the page is going to be making sure that whatever this background space here is, it's broken up by your symbols. So you want to make sure that you're using your symbols to break up this background space that is not border space. So I've got my sewing thing, and I can even take this and make it kind of go over here, and with my needle, and see now I've got, even with this just one symbol, I've got overlapping here and I've got overlapping here, and I've even added a little bit of cropping, and it breaks up this space, so this space here isn't quite so big. So I've got my sewing symbol, and then I think I'm going to include my PlayStation or my Xbox controller. And let's see, how could I do that? So I could put it, I don't really like it there. It's too close to that. I think I kind of like maybe I pull this over here and I put my PlayStation or my Xbox controller here. So maybe it overlaps that. Now remember, and I talked about this before, but let's give you a little bit more detail. If I have 2 things like this, I can't tell which is on top, the circle or the square. If I draw it like this, the circle is obviously on top. So whatever you're overlapping, you've got to figure out which one's on top and then erase the other one. So I'm going to make my thread go behind my controller. Now remember, this is still a sketch. You should be doing a lot of erasing and moving and thinking, and you also want to make sure your symbols are nice and big so they help fill up those spaces. So now that I've got my 2 symbols about me, now if I wanted to, I could include a third one, but don't include too many symbols. You don't want more than 8 symbols total. So if I added in an extra symbol for myself, then I would have to have less for my extended family. So no more than 8 total. No more than 8 total symbols. So I've got my 2 about me. So now I'm going to go to ones that are about my family. And now I think I'm going to use this first one to be about kind of my immediate family. So because I've got this big space here, I think I'm going to put my hammer, my dad's hammer right here. And I'm going to put that on top, so that means everything that's underneath disappears. So that's there. And then I've got these kind of 2 branches, so maybe I put kind of my religious symbol right here. Now I'm not making this as detailed as I'm going to on my final, which you'll see. But I'm just kind of figuring out where things are going to go. And then maybe I take this branch up here and I bring it up a little further. so that I can put a symbol, and I think I'm going to put a computer right here going off the page. So I've got another cropping. It's still tied to my tree. And so I've got another 3 symbols. So I added 3 from that one. So that means I still have, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I still have 3 symbols left. I think I'm going to put my Canadian flag. Now for my Canadian flag, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this whole space up here with the flag. So I'm going to draw so that this space right here, this negative space between the tree and the border, is going to become a flag. So think about that too. When you break up that space with those branches, you can turn each negative space, the space around the object, into a space that you could just fill with an entire image. So I'm going to include that there. And then I think I'm going to go with, I think I want my Thanksgiving table is going to go here. Now it's going to go on top of this branch, but it's going to go underneath this branch. And then I've got my Thanksgiving turkey right here with all the chairs coming back. So now if I look at this whole thing, I have overlapping. I have overlapping here, 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 here. I have cropping. I've got stuff going off here. I've got this tree going off here. My space is filled. Maybe I need to, well, I'm looking here. I'm seeing this space here is kind of broken up by this. So maybe I'll curve that around a little bit more. But this space here is kind of empty. So maybe I'll make this, hammer just a little bit bigger so it helps fill up that space. And it's not too crowded. I still think, I'm not a huge fan of this one. Still think it's a little too crowded. But I've got 2 more to figure out. Now, I'm not going to make you watch me do my other 2. But I want you to make sure you're doing all 3 and thinking about maybe including different images or including things in different ways. They don't all have to be perfect, but you have to make sure you have one of the 3 is one that you really want to move on with. So if you have something that you really like in the first one that you do, like I really like this breaking up of the space and putting that flag back there. So maybe when I get to this one here, I will make sure that I keep that element. Or maybe I really like this curving line of the sewing needle, so I'll keep that. Maybe I don't necessarily like the way the tree looks, so I'll try one of my other trees. So this is your chance to experiment and figure things out. So, complete your thumbnail sketches.